Hey everyone, welcome to Late Take. On this channel, I plan to provide my late take or opinion on recent video games. Since these videos will be coming out a little after the initial release window of a game, I will be taking into account the game's critical reception as well as its general public reception. I also naturally keep up with many different video game outlets across the industry, so I will be considering all these impressions as well when formulating my own opinion on a game, and then I will point out when and where my opinion may differ. Keep in mind, I am just one dude, and I can only comment on what I personally have seen and heard regarding a game, and your take may differ significantly. But what am I saying? This is the internet, so I am sure everyone will be cool with that. Today we have my late take on The Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. This is a Metroidvania-style action-adventure platformer. It was released on January 18 of 2024 and was developed and published by Ubisoft. It has been critically very well received and is currently at a mighty 87 on OpenCritic. From all the initial impressions I gathered, it seemed that some people found the story and visuals lacking, while the game has been almost universally praised for its tight controls and top-tier platforming and combat. I beat The Lost Crown after about 23 hours and mostly agree with this sentiment. Keep in mind, I never promised hot takes on this channel, just late takes, and in this case, I think good game is good. Really good, actually. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, you should know that I am not the biggest fan of Metroidvania games. I often find that I get lost in these types of games and I don't have the patience to aimlessly wander around to find the correct path. This is unfortunately what happened when I played the cult classic Hollow Knight. I was really enjoying the game until I got lost and frustrated and then put it down and just never came back to it. I know, shameful. I am also not a huge fan of backtracking, which is a common part of Metroidvania games. That said, this game has some unique accessibility options and quality of life features that alleviated these common annoyances for me, and we'll be talking about those a little later. Overall, I think Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is a great game, and I really enjoyed my time with it. I put this game up there with some of the best modern Metroidvanias, including my personal favorites, the Ori games, Ori and the Blind Forest, and Ori and the Will of the Wisp. But before we get into what makes this game so great, let's first talk about the not so great stuff real quick. The story for this game is fine. It's a video game story. If you stick around long enough, you'll find that I am not a big story guy. I play games to, well, play games. A good story in a video game is a nice bonus for me, but is not at all necessary. In The Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, you play as Sargon, a young member of a warrior clan named the Immortals. You are tasked with traveling to the city of Mount Kof to save the Prince of Persia, who was kidnapped. So that's the basic setup, and there are of course some twists you can expect along the way. From what I have seen, it appears that some people enjoyed the story for the most part, but maybe did not like how it wrapped up or how some character arcs were not fully explored. Overall, for me, I found the story to be serviceable, but nothing special, and it was definitely not the main driving force that carried me through the game. Visually, I was not too taken by this game. I wasn't a huge fan of the art style, and I felt that some of the character models did not look so great, especially up close in cutscenes. Some later environments in the game were neat looking, but overall, not much stood out for me visually throughout my playtime. It's obvious that this game did not have a AAA budget, and that's okay, but I think it's easy to notice where some of the compromises had to be made. I have seen similar opinions expressed by others in the community, but I have also seen some people gush over the game's visuals, so there seems to be a vast difference of opinion here. You can take a look at this footage and decide for yourself, but for my take, while I think the game looks okay for what it is, the visuals are definitely not its strong point. I think it is almost universally agreed that gameplay is where this game shines. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown feels incredible to control. Running around and sliding and dashing feels great and snappy. You have a good amount of air control with your jumps, and new abilities you unlock later in the game give you even more traversal options that keep things interesting. The movement is complemented by a deep and satisfying combat system. The combat in this game is easy to pick up quickly and have fun with, but also has a lot of depth to master if you want to put in the time. Something I wish I had known sooner is that you can talk to one of the members of the Immortals at the central hub to practice your combat moves. This acts as a tutorial to teach you combos and unique situations where some moves are more effective than others. This is something I recommend you do early on to understand all the combat moves available to you. so you can slowly introduce them into your combat and also more effectively attack enemies that have specific defenses. You also want to come back every time you unlock a new ability, as they are not only used for traversal to access new areas of the map, but often provide you new combat options as well. Speaking more specifically to the controls and mechanics, using an Xbox controller, the X button is for melee attacks and Y is for ranged attacks. You can press these in different combinations to perform different combos. You can dodge away or slide through enemies to attack from behind. You can toss light enemies up in the air using several different launch attacks and then juggle them with a combination of melee and ranged attacks. The game also has a parry mechanic that can be used to deflect most enemy attacks. It feels very satisfying when you land a good parry, stunning the enemy for a second so you can follow up with your own attacks. The game also has a unique animation that makes it obvious when you missed a parry. A big red slash flashes across the screen and you are punished by taking damage. There are also some unique parry opportunities where the enemy's eyes flash yellow just before their attack. If you parry these attacks, you get a glory kill type animation that instant kills regular enemies and does a great amount of damage to bosses. Similar to Sekiro, some enemies and bosses also have attacks that you are not able to parry that are designated by a bright red flash right before their attack. You have to learn enemy patterns to best position yourself to avoid these strong attacks, and some traversal abilities you unlock later in the game can help you deal with these types of attacks in fun ways. I think it's also important to point out the great sound design here, which works alongside all these mechanics and animations to give great weight and feedback to all your actions. Through just playing the game, you quickly start to get into a nice flow with the combat, where performing combos and parrying starts to become second nature. You start to subconsciously download enemy attack patterns and counter them with your own flashy combos. Navigating the map with the sublime movement in this game becomes fluid and instinctual. It all just feels so good to play, and that game feel is what I play games for. Like any Metroidvania, you will be unlocking new areas of the map and fighting zone-specific enemies along the way. This game has a good variety of enemies, all with their own unique attacks. You will also come across these combat gate rooms where you have to fight multiple enemies at the same time and defeat them before you are able to progress. These really test your knowledge of the combat system and your ability to recognize enemy patterns. Boss battles in this game are also a highlight. All the bosses provided me a good challenge and usually took me at least a few attempts to beat. Each boss felt unique and had their own set of moves you had to learn to exploit. And most of the new abilities you unlock later in the game need to be used during boss fights to avoid specific attacks and to put yourself in a position to perform attack damage while the boss is vulnerable. I looked forward to every new boss fight and enjoyed how much each seemed to require a different strategy or use of abilities. Aside from combat, there are also some great platforming sections in this game, with some of the optional platforming sections reminding me of some of the more difficult platforming found in games like Celeste. These sections require you to use all your movement abilities along with precise jumping, dashing, and wall jumping. These were some of my favorite moments of the game, as I am a big fan of good skill-based platforming. The game also has a fair bit of puzzles. Some of the optional puzzles are really clever and often require the use of the new abilities you have unlocked. Some of the more difficult puzzles require a combination of precise platforming, specific timing, and advanced use of all your abilities to solve. Some of these felt absolutely insurmountable at first, but with a little experimentation became clear on what I needed to do. Then executing everything perfectly felt so rewarding. Along with new traversal abilities, you will also unlock amulets which act as boosts that can be applied to your character. These can include bonuses to your health or attack damage or other more unique effects. Just a heads up, for some editions of the game, there is an amulet you can equip early on that gives you a bird companion that follows you around and chirps and squawks whenever you are near a treasure chest or a hidden item. I must have missed the description for this amulet because I was so confused and annoyed at first with all the bird noises until I realized what was actually going on. I ultimately left the amulet equipped and learned to appreciate my annoying bird friend, but just a heads up in case he's not as tolerable for you. Throughout the game, you will also unlock special abilities called Athra-surges that are managed on a meter. These will become an important part of your arsenal, especially in boss battles where you want to put out a lot of damage. Throughout the map, there are these bonfire-like trees that you will come across that are used as save points and allow you to respec your amulets and Athra-surges. This becomes very helpful later on when you start to encounter difficult bosses, and these trees allow you to respec your bonuses and specials to better match a specific boss's attack types or weaknesses. This game also has some unique accessibility options and quality of life features worth talking about, especially when it comes to navigating your typical Metroidvania style map. There is a guided mode you can select that gives you an objective marker on the map. This gives you a good idea of where you need to go, but you still have to figure out how to get there and what abilities are likely required. This also makes it easier to differentiate from the main and side paths, so you can explore if you like, or just beeline the main story. I played a little bit before turning on this guided mode, and I found that I much preferred the addition of the objective marker for my playstyle preferences. The thing I dislike most about Metroidvania games is when I inevitably become lost and then just end up aimlessly running around the map. This is not what I consider a good time. The objective marker showing the general direction to go virtually eliminated this problem for me, and allowed me to finish the game without getting frustrated or having to consult YouTube or Google for help. Another bonus benefit of having a waypoint is that it was easier to know if I had all the tools and abilities needed to solve certain puzzles to advance in some areas. If I knew I had to get to a certain part of the map, then I knew I should already have what I needed to get there. Available and blocked paths are also marked on the map in this mode, and when a path is blocked, the map even shows from which direction you need to enter, which is a unique map indicator that I have not seen before and was very helpful. Outside of the guided mode, you will also unlock an ability early on called memory shards. This allows you to take a screenshot that is pinned to your location on the map, and then later you can select the icon to see an exact picture of what you were looking at. This is immensely helpful when you get to an unreachable area that clearly requires a new ability you will unlock later. You can just take a snapshot and then select the pinned icon on the map later to remember exactly what you were looking at, and then deduce if your new ability will allow you to make progress there. I really appreciated the guided mode option and all these quality of life features, and I believe they allow me to enjoy this game much more than I would have otherwise. So that's my late take on the Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. It's good, really good, and I think it's very well deserving of the mighty 87 it has on OpenCritic. It's up there as one of my personal favorite modern Metroidvania games. Gameplay and game feel are keen to me, and this game has both in spades. And on top of that, it also provided me the options needed to alleviate most of the common hangups I have with typical Metroidvanias. I really enjoy my time with this game, and it's an easy recommend, especially if you are already a fan of Metroidvania games.